Jimi Hendrix is not fucking marginalized.
Yeah. No. No, no, no,
And
no, no.
and
How? What's the
okay,
argument?
so I apologize for not having these open right in front. I can like um here we go. So this is recent. This is from 2020. This will say, oh, this is from June 1st, 2025. This is a retrospective review of the first Jimi Hendrix Experience album. Are You Experienced? Oh man, dude. This is gross. So it talks about how some gig at the Hollywood Bowl he played. I believe he was opening for the Mamas and the Papas. This is by a writer of very high repute named Grayson Curran, and so he's opening for the Mamas and the Papas at the Hollywood Bowl. He doesn't want to be there, and according to Curran's account, the Jimi Hendrix thinks the gig isn't going well because the response is kind of muted from the audience. Okay, so um, it was the summer of love, sure, but it was also the long, hot summer with ubiquitous race riots providing a warped mirror of the overseas escalation in Vietnam. The moment was charged, and so this lily white crowd was having none of the black man in his butter yellow pants and bejeweled jacket, even if he was letting them off easy. And that, okay, go ahead. You made a face. I'm going to leave. I want to hear your take on that to start with. I'll get back to my other point.
Are you sure?
Yeah, man, because that I feel the same way as you when I fucking read that. That's this is perverse, and that's why I say it's almost like a sexual. It's almost like somebody putting on blackface as claiming that they're doing it to do a parody of somebody doing blackface. In other words, it's so salacious and it's savoring of all the, oh my god, these lily white people in the crowd for the mamas and the papas, they saw a black man. And really what you're doing is you're betraying your own fucking prejudice,
Mhm.
because that 1960s crowd was not looking at Jimi Hendrix as just a black man the way you are projecting all this shit onto that. Like it's like we've become narrower in in our scope, and the my peers, my supposed peers, music journalists, are like the fucking frontline paratroopers of spreading this shit. And so there's that. And to your point, I'm really glad you brought up the baseball thing. So just as a quick setup, I've said this ad nauseum, I say this all the time, but it's important for context. I grew up in the South Bronx in a mostly black and Hispanic neighborhood, but my friends, most of my friends were older Puerto Rican kids, about 6 years older than me, who were aware of hip hop and Latin music, but were into exploring a ton of other stuff. So I discovered rock on my own at like 8 years old, but when I moved to this block where these other older kids, we were trading a bunch of stuff. And again, we were aware of hip hop, we were there. This is the 70s, early 80s, right? But a lot of my older Puerto Rican friends basically were into rock music and then sort of tangentially into hip hop. There was one hip hop freak among us, but he also loved Rush and like, UB40 and U2 and shit like that, Van Halen. And then I went to a private school in Manhattan, a very exclusive private school with mostly white kids. A lot of those kids were into rap music. So and that's oversimplifying it somewhat. A lot of those kids were into punk and metal too. But there was a lot of, I was hearing hip hop more at my exclusive private school than I was at home, right? And so my sense of the whole racial picture is not as fucking just, you know, dumbed down as what these writers are trying to present to us. To me, there was a real fertile exchange of music going on all around. And what I noticed was you can say bands like Living Color and Fishbone, oh, it's racism that had something to do with them not being as successful. I don't know if that's played a part. maybe it did, but Fishbone, for one, were so varied and all over the map, and you could go to a Fishbone show and they play like 12 different styles of music that they weren't going to have everybody on. They weren't going to catch a big mass crowd with that, right? Awesome, amazing live band, actually one of the best I've ever seen.